workshop meeting for Monday, June 28th to order. It is 6:30 p.m. First item of business is at our June 14th meeting, we went into closed session at the very end of the meeting for the purpose of doing our superintendent evaluation. And so this statement is a recap of what happened in our closed session. And this statement will, I believe, make it to the meeting and go back into portfolio or file along with the whole evaluation. So
All right. Thank you. And hope everyone's doing well. Thank you, Hope. I've got Mr. Gorath here. He's sixth grade social studies teacher and has been involved in the trip for 15 years. And we really wanted to just come and have a conversation about a revision to our annual Wolfridge trip that we take. And Mr. Gorath has spent a great deal of time, and he's going to go through kind of the plan and some options. But we know that this is one of those things that's talked about at graduation. It's one of those highlights for kids. But there's also some things that these guys have spent time planning, some things that have come up over the course of the last few years that we need to have an honest conversation about, and then look at some options that we believe will better serve our students and our families moving forward. So this has been a conversation that we've been having internally, and in my board reports for the last few months, I've been talking about that these conversations have been happening. Even prior to COVID, our staff was talking about how, talking about some of the struggles that we faced with Wolfridge each year. Not Wolfridge as an organization. They do an outstanding job. So this is not a reflection on them at all. But we just honestly haven't pursued it because of the long-standing tradition. And but when we weren't able to go this last year because of COVID, it gave the staff honestly a chance to breathe and think about some other options and do some research. So just to kind of give you some background, the concerns, the main reasons for the discussion really centered around financial. It is a huge financial undertaking. There's fundraising difficulties, liability and safety concerns at the trip, and then just honestly student and family participation. And Aaron can address that more, but that's been more of a struggle of late than it has been even, when Renee and I were teachers going to Wolfridge. So Hope you can go ahead. So just to kind of give you a background, some of the financial pieces, it's about $180 per student just for the trip to go. So a lot of that is able to be covered through fundraising costs. And then the busing is about $14,000. I talked with Eric, and this is that transportation cost is, Eric is amazing, and Benjamin Bus does an amazing job. So it's not a reflection at all on Benjamin Bus. It's just the reality of the cost of doing business for that. So, and the increase, that cost is not going to go down moving forward. And then just the cost to our families, and just being cognizant of that cost that does go to our families. Now I will say that Aaron and his colleagues do an amazing job of any kids that don't have cold weather gear, and there are kids every year that don't have the gear, and they find a way to get it done. We've gotten donations from community members, so kids have what they need, but it's oftentimes, to be frank, they're buying it at different times as well. So just because the donations that we have, the size of the boots that the kids need, and the trip is in 2 days and the kid shows up, and so kudos to the team for that. So there's a huge financial cost to this, where we could look at shifting and recreating a Wolfridge-like experience that doesn't put such a huge financial burden. Then there's the fundraising difficulty. We've talked about fundraising a lot and how we want to decrease fundraising. Currently right now, both 5th and 6th graders fundraise for Wolfridge. In this model, it would just be 6th grade that would be fundraising. So, and in recent years, the 6th grade team has lost different fundraising. They were selling Domino's cards at one point. and they were selling poinsettias, and both of those fundraising opportunities have been lost. The main fundraiser is the candy bar sales, and there's, I don't recall, but there's another group doing that as well. So there's this, there's fundraising difficulties there. The other piece that, when I was in my previous district, we talked a lot about this, the liability and the safety concerns of an overnight trip, and factored into the age of the students and the medical fragileness of some of our students. This is a significant concern with principals across the state for these overnight trips right now. So to give you a picture, when I didn't go 2 years ago, but 3 years ago, a staff member and myself were in charge of meds. So we had, we had training on how to dispense all of that, but that's a concern. And as medications are becoming more and more prevalent with kids, that's a concern that we have to be aware of and we have to address. And then there's the liability. We shifted where adults are not in the room with kids anymore. That was, so we made that shift, so that alleviates some of that, but then that brings up other concerns as well. So, but there are some of those liability pieces that we need to be aware of. And Aaron and I have talked a little bit about this one, but just and Aaron, you can address this more articulately than I could, but just the participation from students and families is becoming more difficult. It's becoming more difficult to get chaperones, and then making sure that chaperones commit, because they go through and they train, and then something comes up and people don't go. So there's that commitment piece from the families, and then every year there's a battle of getting kids to just go. I was sharing, we dropped, we dropped Lincoln off. He's going to camp right now. So, and he was nervous. So, and we were driving up, and he was like, I don't want to go. And we're like, you're going. Like, but there's that tension for kids as well. But there's some good things in that too. So this isn't an easy decision by any stretch, but, and then the other things, just the reality of where our society is right now. It's in the middle of tournament times for some of our associations. So we've had issues with that have impacted the trip. So that just gives you a very broad background. We wanted to bring it to the table and have a conversation and discussion, because this is something that people will talk about. And they'll talk about it, but then I think we have a good plan laid out, and it'll be a really good experience where we'll be able to not just have, in early March, have an experience for kids, but do more of a sprinkling of experiences over the course of the school year, so that community that's built in March can be built at the start of the year and then grown and fostered and developed over the course of the school year versus just a one-time trip. A great trip, but it's not that you're not able to really capitalize on the growth and the community building that happens on something like that. So, Mr. Gorath, you can come on up and talk about what you and your team have. Aaron is representing the 6th grade team, but you can kind of share your thoughts if you're talking to the mic so people can hear.
Good evening. As we thought about this whole trip, there was a lot of back and forth about the potential for a change, because it is a big change, like Mr. Bakeberg mentioned. It's something that's been in the community for a number of years, and there are a portion of the students who really look forward to it, and then there's a larger portion now that seems don't know anything about Wolf Ridge and don't know what it's about, don't even know where it is. And as years have gone on, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been difficult to get a larger number of kids to really commit to be excited about going. Like they complain about they can't have their phones or the food's bad, and uh, it it just seems that there's more of a shift away from the excitement of the trip. Now, I like the trip. I enjoy it. I love being up there. It's beautiful, but I'm not positive. I have no hard evidence to prove my statements, but I don't know that as many kids enjoy it as they maybe used to enjoy it. So this is the rationale behind it. Now, we could still go to Wolfridge this year. Everything's in place. We just have to sign the contract or whatever the case may be. But this is our in-case proposal that we could maybe go forward with. And the linchpin of this, if you could go, I think it's 4 slides ahead, would be Sand Creek. Just talking to the gentleman today down there, and they have a really neat program, and it really revolves, around leadership and community. And this would be a great trip to do in September or maybe early October, to get the kids to team build, to recognize differences in each other, and just to kind of come together as a grade level, and to be understanding, and to learn about encouraging other people and seeing that some people may struggle crossing the ropes course, but if we encourage them, we can build. We can encourage someone to accomplish something that maybe they couldn't have accomplished before. So Sand Creek would probably be like our linchpin to this whole thing. They've got the zip line, the high ropes, and the low ropes, and then they have some other team building exercises that they do while different groups are going through. So, and the cost of that one is like $40 a student, so that would be a savings that way. We've also looked at Kerfoot in Henderson, much the same as Sand Creek, probably a little more, obviously a little bit more expensive, but they have the zip line, the ropes course, and the obstacle course. Once again, that confidence building, those skills that some of the students need to pick up as 6th graders. We also go skiing. We've gone skiing for a number of years at Highland Hills. We do this automatically through FIAD. So we get that piece of the winter in this proposal. And the FIAD department has graciously organized this for us. And in addition to that, they would also have like a snowshoe unit or a cross-country ski unit that we could do just in our own backyard. And then of course we could do other things, vertical endeavors in St. Paul, I believe, and also there's one in Bloomington. There's a rock wall that if we had the funds, we could also do that. So we're looking at a potential of 3 different mini trips. So we're trying to recreate Wolfridge in the aggregate without driving 5.5 hours north.
And you just scroll down the Sand Creek Adventures. That's a local business.
3 miles down the road.
And so not only do we support one of our local businesses, but we're accomplishing one of the main highlights of Wolfridge. And you could structure it. Obviously, this Creek to make it work when it's really going to be successful. And as Aaron talked about, we sprinkle to build that community over the course of this. So that's really kind of the end goal, is to not have it be a one trip, but really taking and sprinkling it over the course of the year.
And honestly, if you think about the 3 days or the 2.5 days we spend up there are really intense, and they're really, the schedule is stacked. So the kids don't have a lot of time to reflect on what they're doing or what they're experiencing. With these 3 little day trips, if we do it this way, we could have opportunities to teach them about the team building or the community building that we go through at Sand Creek, and talk about that more in like an advisory situation and build on it for the rest of the year. So that was one of the rationales as well.
This is the recommendation that we move forward. They're recreating the experience through multiple trips. And what Aaron talked about, we haven't signed the contract for Wolfridge yet, but it's typical year, we would sign that contract when we were up there and ensure that we have the same dates because it's competitive to get those dates. But they've held out and you know what they so, but just knowing the ramifications of the decision like this, we wanted to have the conversation here and answer any questions.
And I've got the fundraising all set up already for September, so that domino's already in line. So whatever way we go, it's still possible.
You ready for questions?
Yeah.
I've got a ton. First of all, what happened with the kids last year that didn't get to go? Are they gonna get to go?
No.
They just missed out completely.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
What was the last grade, what was the last class that went, was it 2025?
6.
Okay.
So kids going to eighth grade.
Kids going into
Eighth grade.
Because we basically got back. And then everything.
That'd been math easier, right?
So this year,
Seventh graders,
sixth graders going into seventh grade did not go.
correct.
Which is the class of 2017.
Now, to answer your question, that one of the things that we could do, if we did an alternative version, is we could stack it and we'd have to figure out funding for that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a way to make sure that those kids are getting that same type of experience.
Yeah, I just feel bad for those kids that missed out, and I just think it would, if we do go this route, it would be good for them if we were able to do a smaller version or do something. Let's see, what else? The educational component piece. I know that's a big piece of Wolf Ridge that you do, you know, I believe journaling and nature studies, and so that would all be incorporated into this also?
Yes, we could definitely do that. Even the nature studies, we could do locally in town. We
Sure.
could go drill holes in the ice and down in Lagoon Pond
Sure.
and replicate
Sure.
what they do up there.
Yeah. I guess one of my concerns is for the non-athletic kid, it would have been me a few years ago. You wouldn't have caught me on any of that stuff to save my soul. But for those kids at Wolf Ridge, I know they still participated to some extent, but they also had other opportunities around the bonfire, in the lunchroom, deep frying clover and whatever kinds of things they did. So those other classes for the kids that don't quite fit the adventure.
Like owl pellets, for example, that's a favorite up there.
Yes.
We could certainly replicate that. That's a quick click on Amazon to order owl pellets, so we could do that in science class.
Sure. I would hate to lose that component.
That's a valid point.
Yeah, good.
And those are the days that, those classes are the pieces that we could leave within one of our different days throughout the year. That we do, okay, we're gonna do owl pellets, or the sixth grade team does a really good job of creating the schedule. So you could have 6 different classes, and you do owl pellets, and you could do, ice fishing, and then you just have to locate, the kids sign up for the ones that they're interested in, you give them some choice. You could even ask the kids what are some classes that they like more and more fun. The other piece that I thought about over the weekend is, we could look at our elective field classes that we have, and we could embed some of this, some of that stuff into our elective field classes as we're, like the science that I'm taking.
Do you have the data for the last 2 or 3 years of participation? Between the classes and how many actually participated and actually went versus how many did not go?
I don't have that with me.
Can we get that as a follow-up?
We could try. It probably would not be like to the number exact, but it could give a general picture maybe.
Just in general, maybe we get 90% participation, and I'm talking just for the class of 25, maybe 24, 25.
I think it's gonna be a little bit skewed because there's about 5 or 6 kids in the time that I've been here that have stayed back. But I also
also know at 5 o'clock in the morning, multiple times, these guys are going and knocking on doors to get the kids to go. So if they don't do that, kids aren't going. And they're going to the house because mom and dad are saying, they're scared, they're not coming. So they're going and saying, all right, let's go. You know, Miss Davis,
She'll go knock on the door.
persuasive.
I
So,
had one of those children.
Yeah.
Would not go, didn't want to go unless she was saying to a particular parent, she didn't get scared at a particular parent. We still made her go, but I didn't have a teacher come knocking on my door. I had a parent doing it, making sure that she went. But I still think would be good to know what the participation rate was for the last three classes that went. And then I'm struggling with the getting the parent participation. And the only reason I'm struggling with that is because with both of my kids that went to the Woodbridge, all of the parents wanted to go, and when they didn't get selected, they were disappointed. And I'll say, I was disappointed because I didn't get selected to go, so. And I know multiple parents within both of the grades that my kids went wanted to go, so I'm struggling with understanding how we're having participation. And maybe it's just the last two graduating classes. Maybe it was, I don't know, and maybe it is because parents don't know about it and it's not talked about as much. I don't know, I think that's really promote participation. And then what happened in the last 3 years with the struggle of getting volunteers. My husband went one year and he got the answer. But yeah.
Well, you got to go twice. I never got, but, no, I do not go with the chaperone, and the parents. Because it would be, you had to draw names, and everyone get the list, and your name wasn't on the list, and so that, and then all.
And then they were trying to negotiate with, hey, if you can't go, can I take your spot? When it was like, no, you're not allowed to do that. So,
So no, but just having understanding maybe something in the last couple of years, what's different than what it was prior to.
Recently, it's come down to the male versus female. We have to have a certain number based on the number of students we have. So in some years, we're deficient of males and we have a big male class. Then we have a hard time getting dads. Or it could flip flop, where there's a big group of girls, and then we have a hard time getting moms. So it's hard to predict, unless you look back at the numbers, the breakdown of the classes, male versus female. Then it becomes more apparent. But I know that people have dropped out the last minute. There's background checks to think about. That's something that can't happen overnight. So for us, it's nice to have a little extra fly-out time so that we could plan ahead. And recently, it's been 2 or 3 people like a month before or 3 weeks before, oh, I can't go. And you have to scramble to find someone, do the background check thing. So.
Ben, what are other schools doing? Are other schools pulling out and going this route?
I've talked with a couple other principals, and all of them that I've talked with are looking at it. And the main reason is the safety of life. And there's every district you talk to has a different interpretation of safety. So,
And that's certainly valid.
that's the biggest thing that
Are those larger school districts that are backing up school districts that are large?
across the board. And to be very, and I hear you, and I think that's great. I think the big opportunity is the plan that Aaron laid out creates really great opportunities for our kids right here in Home County. Because I would bet many in our community will not
But Ben, I think I like the idea of the creative part. I'd like to see the curriculum of how you're, because I was impressed with the elementary's outdoor learning center. I would like for us to get to use that. And we have disc golf that nobody even knows about that could get incorporated. You could do outdoor cooking. You said I could go on Amazon and get all help. Well, good for you. I personally have done the Sand Creek team building, and at 57 years old, I didn't ever think I was gonna jump off a cliff, and I loved it. It was amazing. I would have went back and done all 3 jumps again. It was really, really fun, and it's an adrenaline rush, and it's your team. Your team is encouraging you, and you're standing at the edge, and they say, go, and you have to go or turn around and look at them, so you jump, whatever. You don't want, you want to be part of the team. But I think the skiing is local, and we have opportunities. I know we want to make it so cool that you want to be a 6th grader, but we have a band and fire trip. We have the Washington DC trip. We give our kids opportunities that are great blessings for them, and they get to travel. If you can make this curriculum be awesome and market it to the max, to them and their families, you may get some moms and dads that could take off a half a day and meet out here, or meet you from work and go skiing versus getting to go the whole trip. And we could maybe send our school nurse, one of them, with on these day trips, so you wouldn't have to worry about late people giving out notifications.
That's one of the big pieces. When you allocate, have your nurse there, have someone who's has a medical background, or the medication is dispensed at home. The more you do. So, all good. And this is why we wanted to bring it here and have the discussion. And Aaron and the team said, well, should we lay everything out? And I said, well, let's do a skeleton. Let's get some feedback from the board.
Have we ever had a nurse go in
I was
to
wondering that.
the board?
We try to get a parent who's a nurse.
Yeah.
Sometimes we hit, sometimes we miss.
And that's hard because then that parent
Right.
was there as they're there as a parent, but then they're also
Right.
nursing. So there are times that someone may go. And I don't remember if that was here or if that was in a previous district where we had a nurse go, but she was like, I'm not doing anything. I just want to do it. You have to valve.
Yeah.
And have we looked at options that are closer, like a Woolridge experience that is closer and a little less expensive, so you don't have to drive as far?
I think at one point,
Where did St. John's go?
it was Eagle,
Camp Courage.
Eagle Lake or something?
Eagle Bluff?
There, I know that at one point, that was a long time ago, we had talked about that, I know.
Was that a Buffalo area? Seems to me that's,
Yeah, it's out on 55. I think
Yeah.
it is.
I think that's Camp Courage.
that's where St. John's, that's where our kids went.
Yeah, but now they've changed it.
I believe there's one down by Rochester, the Crescent area. And
Oh.
then I think Brainerd also, so there's something up there too. New Prague goes up there.
Long
Mountain
Lake
Lake, yeah.
Probably have to get on a waiting list to get on there.
Yeah, for any of
And
those.
it's, in my time here, we haven't looked at other trips because wherever you go, whether even if it's 2 hours away, you're gonna, the financial piece is gonna be a little bit less. You still have the financial piece of it, but it doesn't alleviate that liability piece. So that's the difference.
Yep, we have to even make the comfort in that next responsibility, right? If we're gonna do several smaller trips for one, and we look at that in years similar, the cost actually, so if we offer fundraising opportunities, I look at that as kind of a loss.
The fundraising is, I mean, yes, families are gonna still, incur a cost, but the bulk of the cost will be able to be covered if they are taking the fundraising. So right now, families, unless they do a really good job selling candy bars, they may have some expense to go. So,
Are there traditional reason I'm asking is because with these trips, I mean, you could conceivably, you wouldn't have to do it all in sixth grade, right? There's some things that you can say this is gonna be, this part of it's gonna be a seventh grade experience.
And we do, just to reiterate, when we fundraise, we involve the fifth grade too. So both the fifth grade and the sixth grade sell candy bars. If we play our cards right, we should be able to just fundraise in one grade.
I can appreciate like the difficulty of the decision because there's traditions, right? And like, if you end it this year, my one son will be the last one to go, and my other son will hear
Yeah.
about it forever, right? So I get that piece of it, but at the same time, when I first heard about the trip, like I couldn't believe that in 2020 that was something that we brought to school. Right? I recognize just the logistical challenge.
Yeah. That's,
Busing and the overnight and the parental participation. And all that.
it starts in September and goes until the second we leave, like paperwork and collecting money and.
And
Um,
when we did the conversations with the family fire trip and with the Washington DC trip, those are big kind of companies that do the overnight supervising and everything, so that liability part is off the district. So it's not where moms and dads have to keep track of who's leaving and who's doing what all along.
And those trips aren't offered to everybody, right?
Well-
Like choir is not offered to everybody unless you're in choir.
Right.
Where this is offered
To everybody.
And it's up to the parent to say, yes, I want my student to go, or no, I don't want my student to go. And regardless of what trip we have within this district, there's always going to be a piece of liability. So I don't see how a liability for this trip is any different than a liability for any other trip and then, again, I go back to, this is something that's offered to the whole entire grade. I don't even remember seeing anything about the Washington DC program.
Yeah, everybody was invited,
Yeah.
but it's a cost prohibitive trip.
This is more affordable.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like $2,000.
No fundraising for Washington.
Yeah, there's none. It came home in backpacks. And I think that's all,
Yeah,
but.
what grade is
Eight.
Washington?
Well, it's in eighth, no, it's in eighth and ninth?
If you talk about an eight, people say, oh,
I can't remember. Is it ninth and tenth? I can't
I think
remember.
it's ninth and tenth.
Is it ninth and tenth? Okay. Yeah, you're right. It is.
It's ninth.
Yeah, at the end of eighth grade, we went to the meeting, so.
now I'm gonna ask them, because I went, when I was in eighth grade, it was an awesome trip, like. It is.
I think that, we need to be careful. There's going to be community, some backlash on this.
Heck yeah.
And I don't, no, I get the liability piece, I totally get that. But if we use that as the rationale, we have to be careful because then that same rationale is gonna have to be
Yes.
used across the board.
Exactly.
For every trip, wrestlers, band, choir, Washington DC. So,
I 100%
Spanish.
agree. Yep,
I mean, if it applies to this, it applies across the board.
right.
So,
Plus, like-
I get the cost piece totally.
Yeah.
And I get the piece that I think this could be pulled off really, really well here in our local community. And I know that the staff would do a great job of tying in the educational components to make it worthwhile, but.
And one thing, Marie, we had talked about this tonight, looking forward to sixth grade.
Mhm.
If we were to go the ultimate route, I would almost look to see, let's make that sixth grade celebrate as a season. For them, and even instead of saying, okay, well, from fifth to sixth age, well, we can do that, but there still is, if we were to make adjustments, still having that, sixth grade celebrate as a school. That was always, and again, you can alter and make it differently, but there is something that makes it more special and to really celebrate that. You're talking about that as well.
I guess for me, I certainly, I've heard everything and I understand a lot where everybody is coming from, but one of the things that struck me, Mr. Gorath, when you talked about how it's so intense up at Wolf Ridge and there isn't a lot of opportunity for reflection. After my kids, both of them came home and slept for 18 hours, they couldn't stop talking. And so they did a ton of reflection, and I know that's my kids and that's how they are. But I also think that a lot of kids, like it's a really intense time, but it's also like, I don't know how you capture that bonding and that ability to like really have that intense experience by doing separate field trips. I know you can do a lot of the things, but I don't know, I think there's something to be said for that bonding that happens and the intensity of the trip and like you survived that. I'm not saying that I think I think we should do one way or the other, but I'm just pointing out that that's something that I just don't know how you recreate.
I don't, honestly, I agree with you, Sam. I don't think it's that. It's the conversations in the dorm.
Yep,
It's
exactly.
all that stuff. I mean, my favorite memories of college were on baseball trips, not when we were playing baseball.
Right.
But when we were screwing around and being stupid.
Yep.
In the pool after. So it was, there's, that, again, that's why we wanted to have the conversation. Because this is not an easy decision. Because there's pros and cons of both.
And I would say both of my kids said that, like, and this is meant no offense to anybody, they hated middle school, and I think most people do. And not because of any teachers or anything like that, just the experience. It's just a hard time in your life, right? But they said by far their favorite experience during middle school was Wolf Ridge. And so to say that, considering how much they dealt with, I just feel like that's something that even though, there was, issues with friends and all of that kind of stuff, that didn't really happen on Wolf Ridge. It was just like everything was set aside and everybody, pulled in together, and, when somebody fell on the, on the ropes and was caught by the net, everybody was cheering. And I know that can happen at Sand Creek too. And, both of my kids have been there too for cross country. But I think that there's something about how like when you're going for like a few hours, I think it's very different than when you're in that intense experience and everyone's like, just all of in that team spirit kind of thing. It's hard to recreate that. And I'm understanding where everybody's coming from on all of this. I just wonder, I think that there's something lost here when we do this.
Two things I'm going to throw out there. Number one, at dinner, discussing this with my wife, we said in about 10 seconds, like, great this experience, right? And her comment to me was, yes, but how many kids not, right? And it's not necessarily, not necessarily the activities. I do think it's the dorm experience. It's the, honestly, I was glad I didn't go along, right? It's the separation from family that some kids may not get their entire life.
I was
right?
going to say that, yes,
So
thank you.
I do think that that's a big piece. At the same time, like, I also think this is like a massive undertaking for the 6th grade
100%.
staff. And this is not a requirement. And so ultimately, I think the decision kind of rests with the 6th grade teachers, right?
Yeah.
To a large sense, just kind of deciding what direction you want to take it.
And the thing that I should have said right at the start, like, there's never been a time when the staff has ever complained or said, we need to not do this because it's too much work. And they do a phenomenal job of orchestrating. And I have very little to do with it. But I also have an obligation when I see some concerns happening, like, we need to have a conversation. Because I don't want to have a student get hurt at Wolf Ridge and then have the question asked of me, why did you not ever bring this up? How are we still doing this? So those are those pieces. And I think the difference that I've heard as I've been talking with other principals is 6th grade. Oftentimes the trip is in 6th grade because it's been going on for so long that it was a K-6 building. So it was kind of a capstone.
Yes.
So that tradition has been in place for years. And they were the oldest in the building, and it was kind of a, hey, great job, a celebration. But as you move through and you're doing other trips, they're older kids as well. So there's that piece of it. And that's been the conversation for what fun to travel, but then, you know, say we're not gonna do it for liability, just what Deb talked about. And the kind of the consensus that we talked about is it's a different animal with teams and clubs when you're signing up and participating as core curriculum and your sixth graders as well, so.
Have we had the insurance conversation with insurance people?
I personally have not. It hasn't been anything we've talked about in my handful of discussions.
I mean, it's probably worth, like, it's probably worth an informed discussion there, like, if they're frowning up on it, or, you know, or it's on the deal, or maybe there's trip insurance that's $14 a kid or something like that. But at the end of the day, I think it's gonna come back to, you know, what the staff wants to do. And if they need help.
The buck stops here though, Ryan.
Huh?
The buck stops here.
No, I mean,
I mean,
if
we
the
need the
Spanish
input.
teacher doesn't wanna do the Spanish trip,
Mhm.
it's not part of their job responsibility to do it. You can't force them to do it.
Right, but what I'm saying is ultimately, we're the ones that are gonna have to answer if make the decision.
To
if
not
they-
allow them to go?
Well, or to allow them to go.
The point I'm trying to make is if they don't want to go.
The staff, I get what you're saying,
Absent having like a
sure.
parent committee or something, put something
Yeah, I get you,
together.
I get you.
Well, and I just want to add, I mean, just kind of going back a little bit there, is that my husband went both times, and he thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. And he also came back with a great appreciation for teachers. He came back and he said to me, I had no idea what all teachers go through. And I laughed because, you know, having been in the classroom for many years, I'm like, yeah, mm-hmm. And so he actually got a more appreciation for me then too, which was kind of nice. But I just want to say that I do appreciate everything that all the teachers have been through. I know this has been an unbelievable amount of work. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you all have done. Regardless of how this conversation ends up, I just want to make sure that you all know that I really appreciate everything that you have done.
And honestly, Meredith Shipples does so much work on this behind the scenes. I mean, in her quiet way, the hours of hand scheduling every kid for their 6 classes, getting the dorm stuff, being a liaison back and forth between Wolford. She spends lots of time on this, and I mean, she it's a labor of love. It really is. You know, and we'll go. It was just pointed, well, we can look at this as an option. You know.
So, I
Either way.
think we've raised more questions.
Right.
And I don't feel that we're any closer, and I know you're looking for direction, so. What are the thoughts of the board?
Well, this isn't an action item.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't it, but we need to give them direction.
Yeah.
I mean, because if they decide they want to move forward with this, then they're gonna have to get going on curriculum writing and stuff for
I
that.
guess where I'm at is I'm 100% supportive of the trip continuing. That's something that staff, you know, I think it's great. I think we should look into, you know, if there are liability concerns, we should have a conversation with our insurance companies.
Other thoughts? Other direction?
I'm 100% supportive of the continuing, but with that said, I just don't, I don't know how, I need to have a better understanding of how the kids will have that same experience at that trip versus the day trips. And an understanding of the participation and an understanding of the challenges of the parents, and I just,
Well, we could certainly put-
I have a hard, I'm just struggling, I'm sorry, I am.
And that's
And
what
I-
you're struggling is what each of us
I-
struggle with when we
yeah.
sign documents, because it's the tradition, and it's, you know.
I totally,
I think it's just even, yes, tradition, it's the overall experience, and even if it's externally, for me, they're completely exhausted, but come back and the memories and the reflecting, you know, winter survival, things like that, right? I mean, all the things that you're doing there, and just trying to replicate that. It doesn't have to be like the
need to see what it would look like. I am more for the trip versus not for the trip, but I'm not, it's only because I don't know what it would look like. I don't know what the curriculum looks like. I don't know what the trip will look like. I don't know what, like, the team building will look like with each one of these trips. I'm super bummed that our seventh graders, class of 2017, don't have an experience, and it would be nice if we could figure out a way to get them something. Versus nothing, and maybe that's the year where seventh grade does this option, sixth grade does the original option, and then we come back and look to see, you can compare the two experiences between seventh grade parents and seventh grade students and eighth grade parents. and eighth grade
Amy
students.
just gave me the thumbs up, so she'll find money.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I think there was a
Because I
few
can
heart
tell you that's
attacks
not the
over
middle
here.
school budget.
Okay, let me ask this question, and I may be going way off page board here, but I'm just gonna ask the question. The Booster Club supports athletic and activities for 7th through 12th, right? So would an experience like this for 7th grade be considered an activity that could be supported by the Booster Club?
Sarah, is that a question for you?
I don't have the answer, but I can bring it back.
When are you gonna get the seventh grade staff?
Right.
Right, yeah, there again is a, I mean,
They would be doing the day trip experiences that we're proposing now, so you have the two programs running simultaneously. I'm just reaching here,
But what I'm saying is,
but
that's a ton
It's a
of planning
seventh
for the
grade,
seventh.
yeah,
right, I
exactly.
mean, we
They will
can't
not do
throw
that.
that on the whole seventh grade staff, just like that.
But if there's a passionate parent, maybe of a former seventh grade that really wants to take that on an experience, that would be.
What do you want
Yes.
to experiment?
If you'd like to own that, we would love for you to own that. But
So would
I
I
think,
partner with all of the teachers? Like, would it be like I would share, like, something?
so right now, I'm gonna be really honest and say we can't put more on our staff.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
that's so
I
good.
agree.
now,
just-
I think these are some, our proposal was for sixth grade to recreate the experience. If there's a hesitancy, then, and we understand. Some of those more traditional, instead of going to, whatever event that we've done typically for fun, it may be more purposeful. The different team building things we've done, this year we did a Courage Retreat with eighth grade. Our staff recreated the Courage Retreat with our own in-house people. So typically Youth Frontiers has come in and has done it. And I'm biased, but I think it was better than what Youth Frontiers has done because it's with the people that are there, and it was more of a sprinkling of things and not a one-stop shop. So that's the intent of this, is to be able to, over the course of the year, be able to invest intentionally and then have carry out during advisory, which ties perfectly into the middle school model. Okay, when we were on the ropes course, we did this, because Aaron's not there when his kids are doing the ropes course, because he's managing and running around with his head cut off, that way, and going from place to place, checking the kids. His parents, great experience, but he's not there. In something like this, he would be able to be part of the activity, not the one, thing. So it allows your staff to be able to invest in it.
So what can we do to help you
So I'm hearing
with this
the
decision?
insurance piece, to check in on that, as Brian talked about that. You want to get a better sense of what, kind of the meat and potatoes of what happened at Wolf Ridge, how is that going to be replicated? So owl pellets, winter survival, all of those things. What does a schedule of a day in the fall, in the winter, in the spring look like? That I'm hearing kind of some more clarification.
But I think beyond that, it's how do you replicate those after-class experiences? And that, it
Yeah.
you probably can't, but,
Yeah, I think we can.
Maybe with the
Yeah.
house
That's my concern, is that this may be the one opportunity for some kids to be able to do this. And I because like when you think about the band and choir trip, you think about the Spanish trip, all of those things, those are optional. And they're often kids opt out of them if they can't afford it. And I know that we say, and I know we do as much as we can to try to make it affordable for anybody. But the reality is those trips are a lot more expensive. I'm sad to hear that like the poinsettias and everything, because I don't think I paid a dime for either of my kids to go, because they sold candy bars and they sold the poinsettias, and I think maybe we spent like $20 or something like that. And that's that's because they were motivated, and some kids aren't, and I totally get that. Or they just can't for whatever reason. There's all sorts of things that could have happened, but I worry that there are some kids that then will miss out on this opportunity and won't get that opportunity the rest of their schooling.
So would it,
Sorry.
would it be beneficial to check into the closer experiences that are the one up at Buffalo Camp Courage or whatever it is now? I don't know.
Would it be an option with timing?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not. I mean, but if schools are going away from this, maybe there would be an opening. I don't know.
Well, because I know Belle Plaine does it for a week, or at least they did until like the last couple of years. I don't know if they still are.
They went for a whole week.
A whole week in October. Where is that? Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think Mr. Bakeberg and team were looking for feedback on this initial thought. I feel like you've given excellent feedback. Do you have what you need to go back to your team, talk it through? And if your team still feels like they would like to look at the new considerations and opportunities, you have what you need to bring back to the board for an additional discussion moving forward. Does that sound doable?
Yeah, I can update.
Okay.
What is your timeline in terms of, like, you said that Wolfridge has been holding this contract, so I mean, like, I'm just worried if we're pushing the limit there. Got it. So I don't feel like we're doing you a good service here by.
You're fine.
We have a long-standing contract with them for years. They're not going to just give our spot. I guarantee they won't give our spot away while we're working through it.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of time. This would give Mr. Bakeberg and his team time to reflect on the excellent feedback and then make a decision which way they feel would be the way they'd want to pursue. And if that is the alternate activities, then they know what information you would want as a board before they'd make that decision. Okay.
Okay. Thank you
Yep.
very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the federal COVID funding update. Hi.
Good evening. So tonight, in front of you, I gave you each a handout, just a synopsis of all the ESSER and the American Recovery Act dollars that we have received and that we're going to receive. So we put together a little PowerPoint presentation that's based on what's in front of you, but a little more, just a summary and a generic. So tonight we're going to provide information to the school board regarding federal funds. That includes the ESSER funds, the CRF funds, which are the coronavirus relief funds, and the ARA funds, which is the American Recovery Act funds. So we're going to review first the first round of ESSER funds, which will be expended by June 30th, 2021. So we received ESSER and GEAR funding round 1 and CRF funds. And the highlight second and third rounds to be expended are the ESSER 2 funds, which are the American Recovery Act, and also the ESSER 3 funds. So the first round of ESSER and GEAR funds, we received 3 separate pots of money. So the ESSER funds, the ESSER 1 it was labeled 90%, and we received about $63,000 of that, and they will be used up by June 30th, 2021. Those particular funds were used for the distance learning, the JVA teachers, and also PPE and sanitizing supplies. Now, each of these funds had restricted uses of what they could be used for, and I did list some of the restricted uses on the outline that I gave you. And then ESSER 1 funds continued was also 9.5% of that. And out of that allocation, we got about $44,000, and those will also be expended by June 30th. And for that, we used a .25 FTE behavioral specialist teacher salary. We continued, JHS, the high school, did some Saturday school, and we provided the salary for those teachers as well. We also used it on some mental health support provided by Scott County and also technology licensures. So the third part of the ESSER, the Fund 1, the first round of funding was GEARS funds. And by that allocation, we got about $22,000. That money was geared more for technology and to use for mental health support, but we used it on our hotspots, the data usage that we needed to pay for every month, and also the technology for some maintenance repair items for the student devices that just came back now that we need to repair before they can go back out. Each of these three pots of money needs to be expended before we can start using the ESSER 2 funds. So also with that, we received CRF funding, and these funds were from the federal, all of the funds that I've mentioned are from the federal government. So these funds had to be expended by December 31st, 2020. And out of that, we received $486,000. We have spent the money on extra duties for the school nurses, including their summertime last year, the JVA distance learning teachers, PPE supplies, technologies, license and subscriptions, and technology, the staff and student devices. We also applied for and received $53,000 from Scott County through their CRF funds, and those had to be used up by November 30th, 2020, and we helped subsidize the staff and student devices with those as well.
So I'm going to talk about rounds 2 and 3 federal funds, and so the following slides will provide more information on how we'll use those funds over the next 2 years. We have to figure that out for 2 years, and we know that we have many priorities. And we received, feedback from our staff. You as a board have expressed feedback in relation to priorities. And there's a lot of opportunities for us, I think, to do some really good things to support our students and staff. Some of our priorities include mental health supports, student supports, maintaining programming. PPE is a big piece of that, health and safety. And then, of course, fiscal stability for the district remains a priority for us. So when you talk about ESSER 2 funds, we receive $439,000. A little bit over that actually, and those funds can be expended over the next 2 school years. And we are going to be intentional with how we look at those funds over the next 2 years, because there are a lot of unknowns that I'll get to in some upcoming slides. As Amy mentioned, they have many restrictions. She also referenced that we can't use these funds until the ESSER and GEAR dollars are completely expended. So we won't even have access to them until we finish out those other pots of money. And that'll be happening here just in the next week or so. Well, this week, in 2 days.
In 2 days.
Funds also can be utilized the same as the ESSER 1 funds. And so distance learning, will finish up the distance learning costs, outdoor access points, extra cleaning. So for band instruments and all of the components with the choir robes, it requires a special COVID cleaning. So that we'll take care of with that. And then additional cleaning supplies, and then other expenses are to be determined based on our priorities. We also received the American Recovery Act dollars. These were really specific. This is really the summer academic and mental health supports. We received almost $60,000 there, and we found out about this kind of late, just a little bit prior to summer. And as I mentioned, really specific. It's for expanding opportunities for kids in the summer, mental health supports for the summer, and then they really want you to partner with community organizations, summer field trips, because they wanted it to be really relationship driven and experiential. We had come to the board earlier, and you probably read in my updates over the last few weeks that we had looked at doing a really special extra summer program We weren't able to staff it. It was one thing that I had mentioned. We found out about it really probably a week before summer break, maybe 2 weeks at the most. We just couldn't fill the position, so we weren't able to do the program. Now, the positive with that is we have 2 years to use this. So we are doubling down on the planning for that, and we really intend to have a great summer program next summer. To clarify, we're still doing all of our typical targeted services programming for the summer, still all of our ESY. We have some really great programming happening this summer, but we wanted to do this extra special thing, and we were unable to fill that. Additionally, with the American Recovery Act, they allotted an extra $4 per student, so that was an extra $53,000. We are able to use that and augment our targeted service programming that's happening. So if they have any extra needs, we're able to use those funds for our current programming that's in place. Additionally, these are good for 2 years, so we can use that this next summer as well. And then the preschool grant. And again, we found out really late about the opportunity here, but we were able to run the preschool for the first time. It filled immediately. We have 18 kids. People are really excited about it, and that'll be running through most of the summer here. And it was fully funded to cover, it was like $38,000, fully funded to cover the staffing costs, all of the instructional supplies, and the things that we needed for this. So we're super excited about that grant. So ESSER 3, this one we have not spent really anything out of it, obviously because we can't spend it until we use up the GEARS and the ESSER 1 funds. This is that LEA response to COVID, and they talked previously about learning loss. They've changed the language on learning loss to academic impact of lost instructional time. Yes. Local Education Authority. And they kind of, every district kind of designates a different LEA. When I was elementary principal in Springfield, I was also the LEA because I wrote the title grant. I'm pretty sure I'm the LEA here. It just depends on what the district decides. But essentially what it means is how your district decides to respond to the needs of students, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so we received about, $900,000 total in this bucket of money. And again, a certain amount of that money really needs to look at the academic impact of lost instructional time, and the rest is fairly flexible with how you use that. One of the things that is important is really meeting the wide range of needs that have arose because of COVID-19. We know that we have health and safety priorities. Right now, for anyone out in the public that's listening, we do have a survey on our website right now. If you would go to our website, click on COVID-19, right on the left side you'll see public comment. Our public can comment to us what their priorities are in terms of health and safety, give us good input and feedback, and that will help us as we're planning this summer. To clarify, we have no guidance at this time from the Department of Health or the Department of Education as to what fall will look like, but we are required to get public input and feedback on the priorities. So that has been in place now for a few weeks. So that helps us as we're planning. The other piece that's really important when you think about stakeholder engagement is making sure that you're monitoring student needs. That can look a variety of different ways. We'll take a look at our enrollment this fall, look at our class sizes, make sure that we have, classes within our ranges. We will take a look at what we need for PPE. Our staff has been very articulate in what they've shared they feel the priorities are as well. You as a board have. We'll be looking at the mental health needs as well as we are planning. So when you think about next steps, and again, these are pretty big pots of money. It's about $900,000 in the one, about $400,000 in the other. We will be really strategic, but I do want to reiterate, this is one-time money. And so we talked about a few board meetings back. It's like when you get a stimulus check, you would never take out a car loan on a stimulus check because once it's gone, but you still have those payments. And so we have to be really intentional with anything that we put in place with this one-time money so that we don't have a funding cliff in 2 years. And so those are the things we are looking at as we are really considering the needs moving forward. So next steps, monitoring the district needs. We'll be monitoring the federal guidance that we receive and the state guidance that we know we will eventually receive. We'll monitor the input and feedback from the public comment, from our staff, from you as board members, from our families. And then we will designate the funds within the reporting requirements. So another interesting thing that Amy is charged with is, even though the state has fully recognized they haven't given guidance, we still have to earmark the funds within the served state reporting and just put it in as a placeholder. So we might say we'll spend $100,000 on PPE, but then we'll have to go back in and amend it once we have better information and know our needs. So for us, it's still a priority to really be intentional, and we don't know what we don't know about this school year. We don't know what we don't know about next school year, but we know it's one-time funds. We know we have 2 years to make those decisions, and we also know that we have district priorities. One would be our stability as a district financially and looking at our fund balance and getting that where we need it to be. So with that, I will open it up to questions. Yes. You know, I will have to double check if that went out in any of the mailings to our families that are engaged in summer programming. I have shared it on K-Check radio and at a couple of board meetings, but I will double check with that, and if it hasn't, we'll make sure it has been. So it's the full school community. It came out with summer programming guidance. And so that's why I was thinking maybe it went out with the summer school guidance. So I have to double check on it.
Okay, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of it, just because I wasn't aware.
Sure.
So I think that we need to mark it back, like, that,
Yep.
whether we use social media, email, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, social media, so we need to mark
Yeah.
it back.
Thank you for that.
Feedback that
Yep. Thank you.
Maybe I don't.
I want to thank you because I know that it's been a challenge reading through, understanding, and the changes and stuff that are coming out of the funding.
Yeah.
Federal dollars going to the state and the state allocating where they can go.
Yeah.
So actually,
Yeah.
been a great area, but yes.
Yes.
Good. Well, you know, it can be confusing. So, you know, if I wasn't paying attention, I might think, oh my goodness, that is great. There's, you know, all this funding and this should help, and it definitely helps in some ways. Absolutely. Grateful for that. But in terms of thinking about ongoing costs, we have to be really smart, because otherwise we will end up in a funding cliff in 2 years.
Right.
And the unknowns that I didn't even reference, I mean, we have unsettled contracts across the board. We have no idea where those will land. We have unknown needs. We don't know what this fall will bring. We don't know what additional costs. If you would have asked, you know, a year ago, we could have never guessed how much distance learning would have cost our district. And so we just don't know, and we want to be really efficient. We want to be really intentional and make good decisions and not rush to decisions.
I think a lot of people don't understand all of the ins and outs and what the restrictions are, and they just hear, oh, we got a bunch of money.
I
We
know.
can spend it. And unfortunately, that is the case, so I agree with you, Sarah. I appreciate all the detail and knowing, like, okay, yes, we have all this money, and that's great. However, we can only spend it in these certain spots.
Yeah.
And that's the case, I think, with school finance in general. A lot of people don't understand
Yeah.
that in general.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of educating.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, cybersecurity insurance policy.
I don't have my executive summary in front of me, but Stephen did fill out the cyber application, and Dale came back with the company it's called At Bay Cyber Insurance, or Cyber Insurance, and the premium for $1 million is $9,359. So what that'll do is on our current EMC policy, we have a cyber line, and that's going to take off, I believe, $1,348, so that's a net cost of $8,000. And we were offered an option of $1 million, $2 million, and $3 million, and we felt that $1 million was a good place to start. I did some research with my MASBO organization to see what other area districts have, and just all over Minnesota, and most of them do have an extension of their policy. They range from $500,000 to $4 million, depending upon their school size. A lot of them have had issues. They've had breaches, and they've had to reach out to their insurance, and it was a good thing. And Stephen reached out to some of his technology group as well, and this is what we decided to do. We wanted to update you on that.
Stephen, could you speak to, we had a nice conversation last week about, should the worst happen, the absolute worst, we felt that our infrastructure could be rebuilt.
Yeah, so that's
for-
kind of where we came with this million. So let's say something does horrible happen, they lock down our system and they want $2 million. Or our system only covers $1 million, but we could rebuild for that $1 million then. Instead of paying out the ransom, which seems to be a hot topic right now, we could look at and reinvesting it in our own systems. And yes, the current old system is gone, it's locked up, we can't use it, but with that $1 million from insurance, we could then just build up. There'd be some downtime as that happens, but with that $1 million, it would cover us and allow us to get back to where we were before then. So that's kind of why we picked that $1 million kind of price tag to say if everything got shut down and we had to start over, what would it take? And that's kind of where that $1 million came from. And you can see it's kind of around it's all over the board. With the house, it's easy. You know how much a house is worth. You're like, okay, I can rebuild the house for this amount. This one, a ransom, they may ask $5, they may ask $5 million. It's so fluid and so unknown from these attacks that it's hard to pinpoint exactly what is needed.
So is the philosophy that if they do ransom attack you, that you're going to pay the ransom? I mean, is that just become a given?
It's discouraged by the FBI, but but looking at the business decision, I know there's been some recently that have hit the news that they have paid because it is cheaper for their system to pay whatever that ransom
They're very
is.
strategic about it, right? So they're not gonna ask for $1 million. They're gonna ask for it's gonna be just enough for some amount of money, but man, we're gonna be down for 7 school days, or we can pay them $30,000, right?
Right.
They're very good at making it
Appealing.
Yeah.
in that
Making it
spot, knowing the
sharp,
organization, making it,
Mm-hmm.
I think, I can't remember what was it, $5 million or something like that that JBS paid, but it's dropping the bucket now for the lost productivity.
Yeah.
I also think too, you have an issue, you report it to the insurance company, there's a lot of help that comes to your side very quickly.
Yeah.
In a way that you just don't have.
And that's what we've heard from other districts too that have had these. They've contacted their insurance company, and their insurance company lawyer stepped in and took care of everything. 'Cause that's what they do.
So they're
Yeah.
gonna spring to action.
Yep,
Yep.
that's what they do, and they have the expertise, they have the tools, they have the experience to quickly resolve these things where they're not, if we were to do it ourselves, it'd be like, well, where do I start? They already have the resources to do that. They did bring up some things about improving our own security to help with that, adding other layers of security, layers of logging in and how you log in and everything. Dale, it's not right now, this policy, we sign it, it's not a requirement, but he feels like it's probably coming, just knowing from other insurance companies that, for this policy to be valid, we have to do stuff on our end. We can't just be out there into the world saying, come look at us type of thing, which we're not right now. But it's also, continuing to improve those policies so that we do have, a good security. So to try to, we can't block everything, nothing's 100%, but as much as we can on our own side so we don't have to use this policy at all. And ransomware is is one thing. It's a hot button because we see it on the news lately, but it covers other things. If there's, some credit information taken, some private, if we have to do credit monitoring services, they would help cover the cost of those then type of thing. Any type of, even if they just took information and started selling it, they don't want anything from us. They just took it. They would help cover the costs of any type of PR stuff and any type of, what do they call it? They actually have a term for it in here, but anything like that. It's not just ransomware. It's a whole list of stuff that would be covered underneath this policy then.
And it was $1
Reputation
million
harm.
each line item. It wasn't $1 million total for the package, each area.
It was up to $1 million, yep.
Up to $1 million.
I think I know that we're at a point where we're wanting to save money, but, so we are spending more by doing this, but I think in the long run, I think this could potentially save us quite a bit of money, and I think that I think it's a good idea that we're being proactive in that area.
Yep, and it's a 1-year plan. It's going to expire with our normal, and then I think next year too, when we go for bids, it's just another requirement that we go for bids, and if we can find it cheaper because it's built in, economies of scale that they're looking at the security policy plus the normal liability and whatever else policy it's called, but casualty insurance, I can build it all in and see if build it as a bundle and save type of thing. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is it unless Superintendent Evenson has anything more for us.
I don't think so. Hope everyone has a wonderful July 4th and everyone stays safe and yes.
Just because I was looking at the Sierra function, I was thinking of one of their licensing and subscriptions and stuff on technology. Could the insurance be covered through any of our?
I don't believe so. We'd have to look, but I have not seen anything like that listed as examples in the line items that they've given us. Licensing in that's more for like when we do pay for Google Meet and Zoom and like the crossover where we bridge the Google Meet to Infinite Campus.
Okay.
That's more what that is. Good question though.